Hi everyone, Molly Knight Forde, founder of the Awareness School, out here on the front porch, coming at you this week to talk about frequency and duration. Let's find out more. I want to talk about frequency and duration because I recently just had a retreat called the Frequency of Consciousness, and I had a question on my YouTube channel which asked, what do you mean by frequency? How often you're conscious, or the vibration of the frequency? And of course I was talking about the vibration, but the way to get to a higher vibration of consciousness is to raise the frequency. And ironically, you do it by having more frequent occurrences of being present. Now, when I first began to do this work, I set out with an aim and an intention to be present. And we would have weekly meetings, and I would get as far as day 1 or 2, and maybe have 1 or 2 episodes in a day in which I was actually, for 5 seconds, present. Yes, what do I mean by presence? First of all, because we often think we're present when we're not. And the thing about presence is that I have to be in a place where I'm aware of my awareness. I'm aware of my inner state. And that includes having sensation in my body. So this was a whole new learning curve for me, having come out of a Zen dojo for 6 years. And I was starting to understand and work with how to be present out in everyday life, with the cars, with the chimes, with all this, and being amongst people and trying to remember myself, which means having that sense of presence. And so in the beginning, it was very difficult. It was not very frequent. I would forget the rest of the week. And then after a while, this effort to be present, even if it was for 5 seconds at a time, I began to gain a kind of force. A certain energy was at play, and something started happening to me in a way. Because I kept trying to practice, I started to have more frequent occurrences of being present. Now, in the beginning, I set an artificial cue, which was a small alarm on my watch. That's what we had back then. And now in my practical awareness class, I have people set cues, reminders out in everyday life for them to wake up. But back then, I had a watch, and most of the time, I set it for going off on the hour, and I didn't even hear it. I was so wrapped up in thought. So we have to have ways of reminding us, even though we forget most of the time about the reminders, until we don't, and things start getting easier. And what I found is, as I was able to be present in a day more frequently, I realized that something was happening with the duration of my presence. I was able to be there longer. And with the kind of retreats that I run, and the kind of retreats that I've done for so many years, attended and participated in, and lots of ways of growing my attention, we would stop on the hour, still do, and I would learn how to keep my attention on my presence for a longer duration. We would stop for 5 minutes, and I would find myself going in and out of presence 30 times, perhaps, in a 5-minute period. And if you're honest with yourself, if we're all honest with ourselves, we'll see that that happens. It's really, really hard to hold ourselves in presence for a 5-minute period. So as I learned to work in which I stopped, and I really made myself stop and try to be there within that 5-minute period, something started happening about the duration of my presence when I was present. So after a while, maybe 5 years, maybe less, maybe more, things started to happen in which we would have a stop at a retreat, and I would realize that I was already stopped. So that was another evolution in the process. So I'm asking you, how are you working with presence as far as frequency and duration? For me, frequency came first, and then it affected the duration of those intervals of presence. What's your experience with working with remembering yourself? And there are great ways to set up cues and reminders so you can raise the frequency and elongate the duration. Hopefully, at some point in life, it's one eternal present moment. Have a great week.